How's it going, everyone? Vlad here with SolusPLC.com, and in today's video we are going to be discussing for loops, and I'm going to show you a basic implementation for input buffering. So what you see in front of you is an example of a for loop that's going to be applied on the input side in order to buffer them both on the T on and the T off instructions. We're going to build a simple implementation, and I'm going to explain along the way why you should be doing it through a for loop and some of the challenges that you may encounter with such an implementation that you need to be aware of. So I'm currently in the main program under the rapid tutorials section, and what I'm going to build is a couple of rungs just to demonstrate the need for a for loop. So in case of inputs and outputs, you're going to very frequently repeat your code. So what you're going to see, for example, is this input tag. This is going to be 0. This is going to go to some kind of an output, or it could be an internal tag on the PLC. So we're just going to call that out tg0. And so the code is going to be reapplied. So in certain cases, you have thousands of these tags. You're going to have to spend the time, especially in ladder logic. It's a little bit easier in structured text, but you're going to go through this, change the zeros to ones, then you're going to copy paste this again, set this to a 2, set this to a 2, so on and so forth. You're also going to most likely add some descriptions to these tags, but long story short, it becomes a very tedious process. Now, in case of just simple XIC to OTE passing, it's not that bad. As you saw me do it, you can pretty quickly change these values, and in my experience, you shouldn't be using a for loop in that case. That being said, what becomes tricky is when you want to do input buffering. So for example, when this photo eye that is tied into your system is going to be set, you want to wait a certain time before you set the output. So what you're going to have to do is create a little bit of logic. So I'm just going to implement it right now. We're going to position this here. This is going to be a T on instruction. We're going to also need some timers. So this is going to be in, out, buffer timer. And let's say this is going to be 0. So what I'm going to set this to, first I'm going to create this. And let's just make 32 of them. So 32 timers. Perfect. We also need to create these tags. So these are going to be booleans, 32. And same for the output, boolean 32. Perfect. This is going to be set to, let's say, 2 seconds. So 2000 milliseconds accumulated is 0. We also need a done bit here on the bottom, so this is going to be done. And very simple logic, so there's absolutely nothing complicated. As I've mentioned many times in my videos, this can obviously be a lot more complicated, and as you saw in my previous example before the start of the video, you can also have input buffers, you can have output buffers, so it really depends on what you're looking to build. That being said, this illustrates the basic principle. And so what I would have to do in this case is I would have to copy this rung, paste this in, change this now to A1, change this timer to A1, preset this to 2000, change the output tag to 1, change this tag to 1, so you can quickly see how tedious it becomes to reapply such logic. And this is where the for loop instruction truly shines. So I'm going to delete this first rung, and just for demonstration purposes, in case you're not maybe familiar with this logic. So what this really does is once I turn on the input, you have 2 seconds before the output is turned on. So in a practical example, when you have something passing in front of the photo eye, it could trigger multiple times. So sometimes you do want to wait to confirm that that object is actually there. So not extremely complicated. Once it turns off, you do need that 2 seconds. If it turns on and turns off in the sequence before it energizes the output, it essentially resets the timer and nothing happens. Okay, so that should be pretty clear. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a for instruction, so a new rung, then throw in any instruction, make that a for. We're going to need, as you can see in the for instruction, a new routine. So I'm going to right click rapid tutorials, add new routine, and I'm going to make that _04 input buffer. Obviously, give it whatever name you may choose to do. Type ladder diagram. Again, you can use any of the 4 languages in Studio 5000. Press on OK. And we can put that in as our parameter. 04 input buffer. We're also going to need a register that's going to be used as an index. So this is something that will be used to count through the for loop. If you're familiar with other languages, we can call this IND as an example. Obviously need to create that tag. So new IND, that's going to be a double integer, create. Initial value, so we're starting, remember that we started this tag at 0. And then the last tag, so if I go and I monitor this input tag 0, this is very important. The last tag reference is going to be 31. And the reason why that is important is because, as I'll show you in a moment, this instruction can go out of bounds, which will make it fault out the processor. So terminal value 31. Step size is by how much you need to jump every time. We want to use all of them, so we're going to jump by 1. And that should be pretty much all we need to make it happen. I'm also going to copy this rung because I do need to go into input buffer and create the logic that's going to be running. Now here, instead of my 0, we're going to use the IND tag that we created in the for loop instruction, for the for loop instruction, because it's going to automatically make that call for each specific timer and each specific input and output tag. So I can do this. So IND is going to be replacing all my indices. That looks good. Let's go back to main and double check everything. We certainly need to delete this rung because it's not going to be used anymore. And then I'm going to finalize the program and see what it looks like. So of course, what you're going to notice here is that the for loop is going to continuously be called. And in reality, there shouldn't be anything that changes. What's going to be a little bit difficult to understand is that if you go into this input buffer instruction, you'll notice that you can no longer toggle this bit because it's being called indirectly. So this is the complexity of the for loops, but in the background, they're going to execute the exact same logic that we had in the past, and as if we had this same rung written 32 times. So if I go and I monitor both of these tags, so I need to look at this IND tag 0, and then the other tag that we had written was, let's see here, so it's going to be out TG. So IND tags 0, IND, and out TG. So out TG 0 is currently 0. So let's write a 1 to input tag 0. As soon as I write a 1, 2 seconds later, you'll notice that this output tag 0 has been set to 1. If I go back and I set this to 0, obviously that's going to be immediate. One thing that you need to pay extreme attention to, so we had set the timer presets on the first and second timer only because we created those rungs. So we need to go into in-out buffer and we need to double check the timers because none of the other ones are going to be set. So let's scroll up in out buffer. You'll see that's 32 different timers. And this is the complexity of a for loop instruction created this way. You'll notice that the first one is waiting 2 seconds. The second one is currently at 0. So I'm going to change that to 5000 just so we can test. But remember, you need to change all of them one by one, which is something that you would have to do regardless, even if you didn't use the for loop instruction. But let's look at this 5-second delay on the second bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this input tag 1 to 1. Press enter. If I scroll down to the other one, it should change in 5 seconds. There we go. So output tag 1 has been set to 1 on its own through the for loop. And that's pretty much all I have for you today. As I've said, this implementation is going to be a little bit trickier to troubleshoot for those in the field who are not familiar with this type of code, but it certainly saves you a lot of hours of implementation. And here we only had 32 tags, and in certain instances you have up to 1,000 of different inputs. Now, one last comment that I do want to mention, because I did say that this could create an out of bounds condition. So if we go back to the main, you'll notice that I've manually entered these terminal value size. If I, for whatever reason mistyped this on a live PLC, so I set this to 34 and I compile my program. Once again, this could be a human mistake that you make. What you'll see is that it's not going to work. And essentially, the controller has been put into an offline mode because it's out of bounds at this point. I'm surprised it didn't throw an error. Normally it throws an error, but you'll notice that the code is no longer running. If I go into a different implementation, the processor is not in run mode. There we go. So there's the fault. It took a little bit to process, but you'll see that the controller is definitely faulted. And if we go to faults, what you'll see is program fault can be tried by a fault routine array subscript too large or control data type pause or length invalid. So it will indicate the task, the program routine and rung as rung number 0. So it calls it on the input buffer routine, but we all know it's ultimately in the main routine because it's going to be out of bounds for that specific buffer. So something to be very cautious with, especially when you work with a live system.